Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of our discipline deep dives. This is Jonas from the Intergames community manager speaking. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome everyone. Today we're doing another discipline deep dive. This is our eighth, and I suppose it's kind of like our final discipline deep dive of this season, because we've done a discipline deep dive in art, animation, audio, marketing, programming, probably something else, and this is the production one. And then we take like a short break from the discipline deep dives, and we kind of come back and do those 8 disciplines again, in like a slightly different order. So this is almost like season 1 of our television show, and then soon we're going to come back and do season 2, and later in the year we'll do season 3. So thank you for joining us for the season finale. It won't be as impressive as something that you've heard about from, I don't know, House of Dragons and whatnot, but hopefully this will be educational and impactful nonetheless. Today we're talking very specifically on the subject of production and project management, and we'll get into a little bit about what that means in just a moment. If you haven't been to one of these discipline deep dives before, these events are very specifically designed to look at entry-level games positions in the games industry, and thankfully Intergames has made a really wonderful resource called the Entry-Level Skills Hub. Little linky Rooney down there for you right now if you haven't seen that. That resource really helps you understand what are the entry-level jobs in the games industry, and then for each of those roles, like what the expectations are, what should you be able to do, and what should you already know, and more importantly, like what should you be communicating to people when you apply for those positions. We've looked at what a lot of those positions kind of demand, and we've said, well, wait a second, how are you supposed to know that stuff if you don't know it already? Well, how about this? How about we give you that information on a digital platter, and that digital platter is shaped like this, a discipline deep dive. And so we noticed that, you know, for associate producer roles, there's a really high expectation for you to understand quite a lot about project management, what that means, what the language of project management is, and sort of, you know, the terminologies that exist, but also more specifically how they're used in games in comparison to other industries, recognizing that games are kind of, you know, very much a unique creative endeavor of their own. So first of all, just if you're in chat as well, you know, I'd love to just understand if do we have project managers in chat? Are you someone who comes from a project management background? Are you already producing in games? Are you looking to produce in games? Or are you maybe someone that works more artistically or technically, but you find that you do want to keep up with that project management lingo? Because I think this is a talk that will be valid for absolutely anyone working on creative projects, but really interested to know what your backgrounds are. So please do pop that in the comments if you don't mind. Now, of course, I am never the professional that is going to teach you this stuff. I would never dare to encroach on such territory. No, no, no. Instead, what we have done is we have found an expert in the field who has come to us and is willing to share that knowledge. With that said, hi Nick, how are you?
Hi, Jonas. Glad to be here. So, when you just told about the House of Dragons, I just realized that my desk is full of dragons. This is my favorite Charizard. I also have my wonderful, wonderful Deathwing. Yes, so cool. Dragons in the house.
I feel like I've got some dragons around. Final Fantasy definitely does that for me. This is a D20 that unfurls into a dragon. We're going like into a little show and tell here. That's not what I mean to do. But yeah, dragons are topical at any time of
Cool.
the year.
Cool. So yeah, my name is Nick. I'm an agile delivery coach at Creative Assembly. So this is a position that is actually a mixture of classical project management, Scrum Master, and everything that is related to producing. And just as you've just told, there are some specifics in game development. So basically, even before Creative Assembly, I've been working in wargaming in some other gaming companies, but I also spent a lot of time in just regular IT corporate stuff. So I can understand and relate what is working the same, what's not working the same. So questions about namings is a very popular question, and I think we will cover what are these like iterations, increments, Scrum stuff, and also just more regular topics. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to the discussion right now.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, as you say, so you're an agile coach, and like we will get a little bit into like what that means because you know we some of us may have heard some of these words before, but they're a little bit like nebulous. Like, oh, what's an agile? And some of us have probably been working in agile environments all of our lives, maybe not even realizing that that keyword actually describes like the context of our work. I worked in an agile environment for years, only to discover that it's actually not nearly as agile as a lot of other actually agile environments, and I found that quite fascinating. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about like before we kind of get into these specific terminologies. All of these words, you know, agile, Scrum, you know, etc. They're kind of used under the banner of like project management. So you know, we can all imagine a world where an artist and a coder get together and they spend years on a video game. But in that context, like, who's, you know, neither of those two individuals are a project manager, right? So if we threw a project manager into the mix, like, what is their responsibility? What are they doing, especially in the context of game development? Nick, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, so basically, if we talk about definitions and trying to understand what in games could be called a project, a lot of the times, like small games, kind of are almost equal to the project. If we talk about medium and like triple games, sometimes the game is just one project, marketing campaign is another project. Support for live services is a third project. So there are like multiple different phases. So each of these phase usually has some, I don't know, time, some budget, some resources that need to be spent on this activity. And in like regular terminology, everything from it could be a project. So if we talk about an artist and the developer and we add a project manager into the mix, most probably that would be a person who will be mostly helping them with planning their time and planning their scope and work that they need to work on, because not all the time people who are like very dedicated to their like creative vision and thing that they're working on can actually stop and say that yes, it's finished. Sometimes you need a person from outside to say, you know, like this fourth or fifth iteration of this dragon is enough for us. We don't need like anymore. Or just say to him like, you know, AI for this enemy is working great. We don't need to, I don't know, make it aware of all of the possible obstacles and player possibilities to like change and modify it. Let's just finish on it and stop. A lot of the times in these like smaller groups, you need a person who would be in charge of understanding what are the limits, so we can say that the game could be delivered actually. Because if we just allow everyone to be as creative as possible, the project will never end, because there is, you know, a strong feeling of making everything perfect to make the best game possible. So if it's the example of this smaller mix. In other examples, it could be even more. Maybe if you have not only these two guys working on the arts and code, you have, I don't know, people who are working with the game design, because the game is continuously updating. And then you need to understand that, let's say, a little bit live services example, but let's say we have some marketing rhythms, like we need extra content for Christmas, Halloween, and I don't know, maybe summer. So artists and developers need to be aware that, hey, they will need to actually implement new designs, they will actually need to create new regimes, and they will need actually to work on some specific things that are kind of not specifically planned, but everyone is aware that on Christmas you need to have a red hat, and on Halloween you need to have pumpkins in your game. So yeah, project managers could help with this as well. And there are many more other stuff, especially if we talk about bigger companies. So it just really depends. If we talk about people who would like to join the industry, you need to understand, are you joining like classical project management position where you will need to work with people resources and the stuff that is related to business, or you are going to join the team or the company where you will be working with the game production and actually managing the content of the game code, etc., etc. So there would be differences, but other than that, most of the things are quite common.
Nice. That's, yeah, like comprehensive, and yet I think there's a lot that we're not saying because it is so wide spanning and just like it's kind of so nebulous, right? One project manager is not the same as like another project manager, in the same way that one project is nothing like another project. And there's something in there where it's a little bit where you were sort of saying how, you know, project managers can be responsible for the people, for the communications, for the resource management. What do you think if you were stepping into like you know, someone says we need a project manager, what kind of skills or background do you think you as a person should either have or you should go and learn as soon as you possibly can to ensure that you're going to be successful in the project management role?
So mostly, from my expertise, it's coming around planning and prioritizing. You need to understand what is the scope of work or a group of people or anything that you are actually managing. So what's your kind of project? And if we talk about managing, the most important thing is after you've created this plan of things that you think to are crucial for your project, you need to be sure that priorities are not changing, or if the priorities are changing, you are ready to adjust the plans. You are ready to work with your team and actually to understand how to change the plans, because it may happen that, I don't know, any other game on the market is implementing the same I don't know, game mechanic as you do, and you realize that they do it much better than you have already in the plan. So you need to be sure to have a possibility how to pivot and actually change and update. So this is really very important. And after you are sure that you know how to plan and prioritize, yeah, it's really very important to understand how to work with people, because most of the time you will not be just in a box sitting alone with just access to the, I don't know, chat GPT or whatever. You will be working with people. You will be working with people, and you need to understand how their brains working, what do they feel, how they understand, what are their own limits of creativity, what are the limits of your project, and all of this stuff. So like planning, prioritizing, people, 3P, PPP.
And I'm sure we can revisit that a bit later and get it all written down for everyone to put in their notebooks. And then let's talk a little bit about, like, so you're in the role now and someone's telling you, you know, we've got to make a game. Where do we start? As someone who comes from a project management background, you might have some tools into your belt. We might even use the word, I don't know, methodologies, for example, right? So there are different, you know, no one needs to invent project management for the first time when they join the role. It's been done before. Someone's probably done a project just like this before you, and they probably followed like a framework or a methodology. What are some methodologies that people might be exposed to, that might be working to? And I suppose let's, you know, can we name a few, and can we maybe just say why they're a little bit different?
Yes, sure. So let's start from the classics, classic from the project management and in game development, the waterfall. Basically, when you have several stages, gates or milestones that are coming one after another, it's one of the coolest example of showing how games industry is similar to the movie production. You have something like concept phase, you have pre-production, you have production, post-production, and post or like launch or whatever. So you have these phases that are coming one after another, and that's why it's called waterfall. You need to finish one step before you can go to the next one. Usually it's something that is a reason, you know, to call managers here producers, because it's really like in movies, it's really like in music and some other entertaining stuff. If we talk about agile, the kind of a contrary to the waterfall, this is a set of methodologies, frameworks, and thoughts about making everything not in like big chunks one after another, but about small increments or iterations where you continuously update and change something. It's usually something that is very, very good for working on the purely IT stuff, where is most of your content is coming from the engineers. Because it's a little bit hard to make fast, the game design ideas, level design ideas, because it's enormous amount of work. But still, it's something that is also doable. And obviously, there's a hybrid approach when something is made in the waterfall way, something is made in agile way, and some of the like different game types and game companies, they actually specialize in different ones. Let's say one of the most popular type of game development right now on mobile phones is hyper casual development. Hyper casual development and hyper casual games are small games, and they are developed in like 2 or 3 weeks. Then they are tested for 2 or 3 weeks in small regions, I don't know, Taiwan or anything like that. And only after that they are released. And the studio is actually not working on one single game. They're working on like several games. And this type of games, they're very, very agile. They try to use it as much as possible. But AAA games, I don't know, like God of War or something, classical console game from Sony, it's a very waterfall, because you need to plan a lot of things in advance. You need to budget a lot of things in advance, and you need to actually confirm that you have enough of resources for all of this stuff. And yeah, there is a huge world in between of the hyper casual and AAA console games. So kind of everyone is trying to choose something that is better suited for them. But it just appeared that a lot of the uh, production that is related to actually like engineering and the creative stuff has this mixture of like agile and scrum and the waterfall. And I don't think that it will change quite drastically in upcoming years. So knowing a lot about how to do like classical waterfall in like old and standard methodologies like Prince to ITIL and all of this stuff is really very important, because everything that is coming from the business world is still using it, and it's important for them because you are like allocating budgets, resources. You are actually talking to the publishers, talking to the other departments in the company, not only developers. But if we talk about actual developers, engineers, artists, this mixture is like most of the engineers would use Scrum or something like very agile. Some of the artists, some of the animators, people who are working with VFX, maybe they will try to use mostly the waterfall, because they still have this concept of they need a pre-prod like concept, then they need something else, etc., etc. So you will always be exposed to several different methodologies, and you will need to understand what is more suitable for you. Again, if you are somebody who is like into the market and looking for the job, you will need to understand that if you are going to somebody who company or the department that is working with engineering, it would be Scrum. If you are going to like the 3D animations and the content, there's a chance that most of the stuff would be classical, like waterfall style and pipeline style work. That's fine. That's fine. It's just at some point you will be still exposed to the other departments of the company, because at some point artists will need to provide their work to the engineers, or at some point engineers will need to actually include the work that was provided by like animators, artists, and etc., etc. So eventually you will need to know both.
Nice. Thank you very much for for really digging into that. There's several different methodologies. They've all got a use case, both inside the games industry and outside the games industry. You know, no one's invented a methodology that's specifically only for games and will never work anywhere else. And it is quite interesting to see how like tech and business and games kind of all kind of loop in and out of each other in how they execute these ideas. So I suppose now let's talk a little bit more specifically about, because we said we're going to really dive into specific terminologies, and there's lots of keywords that I think like project managers have to use on a daily basis, and like that we hear getting used in projects. But if you haven't been in a project like this before, so if you're from outside of games and you're trying to get into games, maybe these are terminologies that you've heard but you don't really understand them, or you've heard them but you'd like to be able to use them a little bit more fluidly in your own vocabulary. So first of all, let's use the word Scrum, right? So I want to understand a little bit more about what does the word Scrum mean? What do people mean when they say the word Scrum? Are they referring to, are they referring to a time of day? Are they referring to a deliverable file or project, etc., etc.? Nick, what is Scrum?
Great question. Thanks. So I need to say that there are like two common uses of this word. The first is actually it's a name of one of the agile methodologies that is like Scrum. You can find the website Scrum.org and Scrum Alliance, all of the stuff. So this is a set of like guidance, rules, and things that you need to follow to be successful in one of the interpretations of agile. But according to the same methodology, they are calling one of the meetings that is inside of Scrum, because it has not only the rules but also guidelines on what kind of meetings you need to do and have. So according to their like guideline, according to the Scrum guide, they call a morning routine of like 15 minutes a daily Scrum. It's like daily stand-up or the first meeting in a day, when people are meeting each other and telling about what they've been doing, what are their plans, what do they want to work, and if there are any obstacles. So when you see a word like daily Scrum is usually a meeting. When you see a word Scrum that is describing the ways of working, then it's usually set of different rules, that set of different events and artifacts that are actually inside of Scrum. So after you, I don't know, read the Scrum guide and some of the web resources, it would be easier for you to understand. But most of the times, if we talk about daily Scrum, it's this first meeting in the day where you're just saying hello to everyone and telling the team what are your plans.
Cool. So we've got a Scrum, we've got our daily Scrums, we've got this meeting, and we know that Scrums are sort of a format for kind of sharing information within a larger project, within a larger agile methodology. And then within a Scrum, right, there's going to be this individual who, in some Scrum meetings, they might be called they could just be called the project leader, they could just be called the producer, but sometimes they're called Scrum Masters. And my understanding is that there's like an entire not the word methodology, but there's a qualification that someone can get, right, to kind of turn them into a Scrum Master. What is that? What does that mean? What does that Scrum Master bring to the table that nobody else has, for example? What makes them quite unique in that situation?
Great question. So basically, Scrum Master again is a terminology from Scrum. They've invented it to actually characterize the person who is not actually a person, a role, and usually it's a person who is helping the team or the company, if it's a small company, to actually work in agile ways, to work in the Scrum methodology. And this role is usually responsible for organizing these events and being sure that these events are happening, and every person who is participating in them understands what's happening there. So this part of organizing the meetings and facilitating meetings is one of the core responsibilities. From the other side, this person, and this is why it's important that this person understands the project, need to be sure that there is everything there that can support the team, that whoever is working on the requirements or the backlog understands how to prioritize and plan it. Sometimes this person will need to actually go to the stakeholders or whoever is asking for the changes and say no, because it's important to protect the team. So a lot of the things that are happening not only outside these meetings but also around the project usually are kind of under the head of responsibility of the Scrum Master. The reason why in game dev they are not usually using Scrum Master as a role name, is that a lot of the times there is this specific where you cannot actually like be 99 or 100% Scrum team and Agile team, and your project cannot be in such a way. So a lot of the times teams in game dev are specialized. They are not very cross-functional. So it means that the team that you're working on actually cannot produce every piece of the game. The team that you're working with can produce only, I don't know, 3D animations or only code, and you can actually run all of the meetings, you can plan everything according to the Scrum, but one or two or even like three obstacles, like not being able to create an like increment or iteration without working with other teams, is ruining your like vanilla Scrum concept, and some others are actually prohibiting you to call yourself a Scrum Master. So it's fine if you don't see the job description and job title Scrum Master, but somewhere in the job details you can find usually something like being able to play a Scrum Master role, or being able to do the like Scrum events, something like this. So you don't need to have the Scrum certification or a huge experience of work being a Scrum Master to have the production role, but it's usually very useful. I've seen in the chat the question about the Scrum Master certifications and courses. You can actually find any of them. One of the most like popular one is professional Scrum Master from Scrum.org, and the certified Scrum Master from the Scrum Alliance. But these certificates, they are not providing you the like actual experience. I'd rather recommend you to start any like, I don't know, game jam project and try to use the concept from Scrum, not just getting the certification, because a lot of the times these certifications are just fancy papers. Okay, they're like right now fancy digital numbers.
Okay, interesting to hear. And I'm glad you mentioned game jams, because I think this is probably something we'll revisit later, which is always a conversation about, if you don't have that experience, where do you get it from and how do you make it happen in your own life? But what I want to do is sort of sticking to this concept of scrums, or at least methodologies and frameworks. There are lots of different phraseologies and different, we're really looking to unpack terminologies and keywords here. So we haven't really talked about like a sprint, for example, right? And I think anyone who works in a project knows what a sprint is, but if you haven't worked in a project, and like let's say you're going to work in a game jam, and you're like, imagine you're going into a game jam and your number one goal is like, by the end of this game jam I have to say that I know what sprint planning and sprint reviewing and retrospectives are. I have to be good at sprints. But I reckon it might be hard to do a sprint in a game jam context, but just by the nature of what they are. But like, what is a sprint? What is it? What does someone mean when they say like a sprint is happening in a project?
Okay, so sprint is a time-boxed event in Scrum. It's an event that like is due to some specific timeline. Let's say if we are working in like a game jam that is only 2 days, like 48 hours, you can say that just whatever your sprint would be, it couldn't be longer than 48 hours. But sprint is not only the like time limited thing. It's usually something that is tightly related to the increments, amount of work that you would like to finish during this time. And this is a very cool concept that is helping you with understanding what is the speed of your development, how much work you can fulfill in like 2 days, 1 day, or 2 weeks. The classical sprint is 2 weeks. And how good are you at planning this amount of work? Because if we talk about, let's say, game jam, you can say that I can have 4-hour sprints or 6-hour sprints, and I expect that in 4 hours I will have, I don't know, 2 animations, 1 blueprint, and something like this. And after you finish this like creating a list of things that you can finish in 4 hours, you can say that, yeah, I've just done a sprint planning. I thought that in 4 hours I can do this stuff. Then you have this like 4 hours amount of work that you need to do. And after that, you can actually do a quick retro and review to understand, was it actually possible for you? Are you successful in doing this, like 2 animations and 1 blueprint or not? If everything's fine, cool, you can start planning the next sprint and working on it. If no, you can understand that actually I'm really good in doing animations, but I'm very new to doing the blueprints in Unreal Engine, so I failed with it. So for the next 4 hours, either I will focus only on doing the animations, or I will focus only on doing the blueprints. And if I fail for the second time, I will ask for help, I don't know, a developer, something like this. So you will be able to understand that after the first sprint and after you've planned it, reviewed it, and did a small retro, you can actually change the plan for the next sprint. It's really hard to do and achieve it in like very short game jams, especially if you're working alone. But if it's a game jam that is a week long and you have a team of like 2, 3, even like 5 people, you can agree that your sprints are like days or a couple of days where you plan amount of work that you would like to finish. And after this like amount of time spent, you're reviewing it. And basically in big games, this is the process that is happening for longer periods, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Some people are doing even month sprints, but usually it's something that should be relatively short.
Nice. Thanks for digging into that. And yeah, no, it hadn't occurred to me that like a sprint could just be a couple of hours. Yeah, absolutely. Put that in your game jam. Thanks for sort of expanding on that terminology. So we've got scrums, we've done our sprints. I suppose there's probably some other terminologies, but before we move on, Nick, are there any other like keywords or just terminologies that they come up frequently? You maybe constantly get asked at the end of a meeting, like, "Hey, I don't know what that word means." Like, are there any other terminologies or languages that you think are pretty fundamental in your line of work?
There's always a misconception of what is an iteration, what is an increment.
Okay.
Just a lot of the times when we talk about game development, most of the creative concepts are going through iterations. Like you need to, if we talk about, let's say, something artistic, you need concept design, I don't know, graphical design, then you need like visualization in Photoshop, and all of this stuff. So you need to understand what of it is an iteration and what is an increment. When you are actually adding something or when you're actually producing the end result. And a lot of the times when we talk about games, some people are like trying to really understand what could be, this alpha or beta version, what could be a demo, what could be an update for it. And all of it are actually iterations. Some of them have incremental updates, and it's actually confusing a lot of the folks. But basically, you just need to understand that after every sprint or this like milestone gate, whatever, you need to produce an iteration of the game or a product that you're working on, and you need to be able to get the feedback from it, either from the QAs or people who are testing it, or from experts. So I guess understanding what's the difference between these two concepts is one of the most famous misconceptions. Other than that, most of the terminology is really like specific to the project and the tools that people are using. Some people were never using Jira and Confluence. These are the project management tools, like not project management, they're project tracking tools and bug tracking tools, where you just need to understand what is this task, what is this story, what is this epic, and what are the relationships between them. Because in the classical software development world, there's a word requirement and task, and then people from Agile Manifesto and people from Extreme Programming created a concept of story. Story is actually not just a task for people to work on. It's something that's is written in a user voice, something that is describing what exactly needs to happen and how the end user will actually understand what is needed from him. So these words are heavily used in different software, like let's say Jira is utilizing words stories, tasks, subtasks, epics for actually organizing these requirements. Some other tools like Perforce, Helix Core, and more like classical game development tools are using other terms. This is something that would be really dependent on what tooling system is in your company, but in the company you're looking for a job. But if it's your own project, you can call it whatever you want. I don't think that the naming is a big problem for your own project. But in the big companies, yeah, it will depend on the tool.
Gotcha. No, thanks for digging into that, and especially thanks for talking a little bit more about increment and iteration and things like that. Sort of, we mentioned this earlier, and so I wanna kind of revisit it. But we talked a little bit about when we're implementing project management into an existing thing. We're talking about resource management. We're sometimes telling the artists or the coders that no, you don't have time to do that, bring it back in, let's tie it up a little bit, which I imagine gets met with like resistance. Sometimes people want to work on the project forever and they want to make things better, and often the project manager is the person that actually has to kind of put the brakes on that and be a little bit of that kind of slightly more negative or dissenting voice for the sake of a better outcome. What kind of challenges, like the one I just said, what are frequent challenges, what are common problems when these methodologies get introduced to a project, or when you try and apply these methodologies to a creative project? What kind of goes wrong there, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, so one of the examples you just provided, that it's really not working well with the um, creative side. It's just because not all the time it's easy to predict how much time it will actually be needed for this fulfilling the ideal concept in human minds. And because of the same reason, another problem that is always appearing is actually balance of what should be this part of creative thing and what should be just a regular um, already expected by players thing. When we talk about Ubisoft games like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry, a lot of the players are actually expecting an open world, some of the most of like very similar tasks to fulfill, like I don't know, kill everyone in one specific region, find some specific stuff, very repetitive stuff. But yeah, for a lot of game designers, this is not very creative. This is a very stupid task that they just, I don't know, need to work in the Excel spreadsheet, and it's not interesting. It's boring. But a lot of players are expecting it because they actually go into their like flow mode and they actually can enjoy it. That's completely fine. And planning for an optimal balance of what should be a creative side and what should be just a very repetitive side is a very common challenge, because it's much easier to plan repetitive tasks. It's much easier to plan things that everyone already knows. And this concept of user story, I'm coming back to this terminology. When you as a developer or Scrum Master, product owner, you understand your user, your player so well that you can describe all his needs in a like one or two sentences. It really means that it should be something very simple. And a lot of the times it means that this simple thing wouldn't be very creative. So you need to find this balance. Another thing is coming from actually opposite side, is that you cannot actually plan money in agile world. You cannot actually plan the finance. You cannot plan the success of your game if you would like to release it on Steam on, I don't know, summer sales and all of this stuff. So um, a lot of smaller studios, again, if we talk about the hyper casual and mobile, they really need to understand the unit economy of like Play Market, App Store, Steam, to be sure that the game that they are working on will actually make a buck and would be at least on this like 0 or like 2-3% of profit. And Agile is not helping with it at all. Agile is saying that let's just do quickly different iterations, and if it fails, it fails. But for smaller companies, the failure of the game may mean the closure of the studio because they don't have enough money. So Agile is not helping with it, and sometimes it can be, it can be really very scary because of all of these ideas to experiment. They are just making the studio to run out of money. So you need to be aware of how to protect the budget and the scope of your work and team to be sure that you are not doing it too much. I think I can come up with other examples, but I don't want to spend all of the time on it.
Well, I suppose one thing that would be really interesting to talk about is just a little bit about, let's say your project does have some of these kind of common problems, and so the ones that I've got written down are like, a common one is scope creep, right? Like people want the game to be bigger, and you can see that that's going to happen. Another one just might be team dynamics. Like, you've got the most talented artist and you've got the most talented coder in the world, but they don't necessarily work well together. Tends to be a common problem. And just like communicating with people outside your team, so stakeholder engagement. How do you talk to your customers? How do you have a good line of communication with your, potentially your investors, your owners, and things like that? These are things that often fall to the project manager to either provide the solution or implement the solution. What are some ways or tools that someone can approach those problems and either have the solution in their hands or at least very much start the journey to finding that solution?
Okay. So if we talk about the scope creeps, I guess the first you've mentioned, this is usually the management of all of the requirements or backlog of all of these requirements, tasks, and you need to understand, like again, coming to the beginning of our talk, how to plan it and prioritize it, and to be sure that you are ready at any moment to replan and reprioritize. This is where agile approach is really very great because it tells you to work in shorter sprints, so you can understand that there is a very limited amount of work that you can finish in a shorter amount of time, and you can actually get the understanding of if you are failing with fulfilling some of the things that are already in your scope. Most probably, scope creep will mean that you will not only fail to deliver things that are already in your backlog and things that you already planned to deliver, but also these ones. So you will need to be sure that the methods and agreements that you have about the prioritizing are easy to understand by everyone, and there would be no surprise when somebody will go to the team and tell them that, hey, we need to implement this new feature. If this will happen, team will be ready to answer to the asking person, yes, cool, we can do it. We will just delete 2 or 3 other features that are in plans, and it should be not a surprise for this person who is coming with the new task. The next one, I guess, the team dynamics. It's just also related. It's a very classical problem when actually somebody is asking a team or another team member to implement something that is against some initial plans and odds, and this conflict can be still very constructive because usually people want to add cool stuff. A lot of these scope creeps are actually extra cool things that designers would like to implement in the game, or developers saw that it would be a cool opportunity to use this new technique. You just need to find a way how to actually convince people that even if they have a conflict of interest, they are having it only in sake of the better world for everyone, because the team is working on the same project. They all love games, they all love their product, and they are working together because they want to do it. So you need to find a way how to actually motivate people to come to a common ground. Sometimes there could be a compromise. Sometimes you will need to help team and facilitate them with agreeing that there are no compromises, and yes, we are changing the plans. It will just come with practice. It will come with practice either in this team or in general in the project. I just really recommend um, producers, project managers, scrum masters to be sure that they are listening to both of the sides. They are not blindly and quickly agreeing with just one side. In like nurturing the great team dynamics, you need to be sure that you are listening and working with entire team, not with just one person. And the same is actually if we talk about the stakeholders. Yes, stakeholders are not always part of your team, but most of the time when there is somebody around you that you usually call a stakeholder, this person is holding a stake. So you need to be sure that you know how to work with this person. You need to understand how to actually communicate with this person. What are the most favorite or easy to understand type of information? Does this person loves PowerPoint presentations or Excel spreadsheets? Does this person expect that you will actually provide I don't know, voice explanations every day or every week or month, or it would be enough just to send the email, something like this. You need to be sure that stakeholders are not excluded from the process, because a lot of the times these are the people who have money, and it would be not really cool if your project, your game will be without money. So you need to understand how to work with the stakeholders. And usually, a very cool practice is doing the demos and sprint reviews with stakeholders. You can invite them. You can show them the actual game or like work in progress. You can not just send them the Excel spreadsheet. You can actually really invite them to join one of the team meetings and show how it works, and not only just do a video presentation. You can give this person a phone, console, PC to actually run the game, to understand how it works, and that you are just not creating the regular paperwork. There is actual game.
Nice. Thanks for expanding all that. And there's definitely, I was going to sort of start a further conversation a little bit about how do you overcome, an obstacle and get momentum, and sort of if a project stalls, how do you kind of get that movement going back on? But I think your comment on like reminding people that they're making a cool game, and reminding people that like they're all aligned in like a very common goal, and like what that future kind of that horizon is, if we can all kind of get ourselves out of this hole and get working on the project. We're all working on the same project, we're all very invested in the same project. I think that kind of answers that question just a little bit. So what I want to do now is thank you to everyone in the chat who has been commenting throughout the entire thing and providing a bit of feedback, and just either giving a little bit of context of where you're from, or just telling me that the word methodology is a fun word to say. But if you've got any questions now, we've got a bit of time basically to kind of hear from you, the audience in chat, answer any questions, and really dig into anything that you specifically would like to talk about when it comes to project management, when it comes to production, and especially more specifically this kind of like slightly more technical and kind of like terminology heavy chit chat. I'm going to kind of just start us with a small question, Nick, just so that time for everyone to ask questions if they've got any. But really quickly, if a project, so a project can fail, right? Projects can fail. They fail all the time, whether it's the money, whether it's the resource, whether it's that the vision changes so much that actually it's better to stop here and maybe start something different. How does a project manager kind of like, if a project does fail for any reason, right? how does a project manager make sure that that isn't something that they take personally? How do they make sure that it's something that they can still see the kind of positives in the work that was done and the things that were achieved? How do you make sure that that isn't something that like hits you really hard and feels like your personal failure? What are just some ways that you can look at a situation like that?
Okay, it's a very tough question because you can be just you. Let's say there are people who will always think in this way. My mom is like this. If something is failing for her at her job, she blames her in it for forever, and it's something that's like happening with her for 40 years. Um, I tried to give her advice. It never worked. So I just realized that for me, it wouldn't be the same. For me, if anything fails, it just fails. I'm calm with this. I will try to learn the lessons from it, and I will motivate myself to actually remind myself about these mistakes in the future. So this is something that is working for me. So I'm kind of an advocate for the same approach. All of the failures are still the lessons to learn. You just need to understand how exactly you can utilize these lessons, how exactly you can actually make yourself better. It's I guess from Stephen Covey book about 7 habits. Always sharpen your saw. So you need to understand that something, uh, the failed project is actually breaking your saw, but you need to find a way how to sharpen it. If you need an advice from friends or other colleague, go for it. If you need, I don't know, therapy session, go for it. You just need to understand what will help for you. For me, it's really working when I'm trying to create not only the retrospective for the project, but also a retrospective for myself. So I will have a list of things that were like failing and were the reasons. And I have like a separate notebook, I guess somewhere there, a separate notebook, uh, a red one, a red book. You don't want, if you are a project, you don't want to be in my red book, because this is a book of everything that went wrong. And I'm just sometimes rereading it to understand what the reflections that I had. It's something that is reminding me about, like, this is fine. Sometimes the kind of the failures can come back to you after several years, when you will, like, see and understand that this was the reason. But other than that, just try to keep calm. uh, I see a lot of questions in the chat. Let's probably go through them.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to shorten two questions into one question because two people have said that they come from different industries. One,
Hmm.
animation VFX, another person, IT, both project managers, both with the right experiences and skills, but the games industry isn't opening that door for them. They're not getting those opportunities. They're not finding roles in the games industry. So, what is from your perspective, what is some great careers advice? What are some ways that when people are coming from other industries into games, how do they convince either a recruiter or a games producer that they can do this in this industry? How do they move industries?
Okay. So usually, something that would be a great help for you in this case is the project that you fulfilled that is similar to the game. You just need to highlight in your portfolio something that is more similar. I guess for VFX it would be a little bit easier, because a lot of the 3D graphics and animations could be really very similar. I know a lot of studios that are producing not only games but a lot of video content for them. So you need to find something in your portfolio that will pop up and would be similar. And another advice is actually try to participate in any game jam. Try to actually do a small game for like 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, and get this real experience and add the finished game in your portfolio. This would be also kind of this will also show the recruiter or people on the first stages of the interview that you are not only like interested in the industry, you actually can do something from start to the end.
Absolutely. And one thing I'm going to do is when the video at the beginning of this video and at the end of this talk, there's like a little looping graphic that plays on screen, has a QR code, takes you to the Intergames Discord. One thing we do in the Intergames Discord is we try and signal post game jams that are happening now, that are happening this weekend, that are happening next month. We're constantly trying to make sure that there's a good awareness of upcoming game jams. We try and encourage people to basically form teams as part of our community. We've definitely got an active community right now. I can name at least 5 or 6 people who are constantly jumping into game jams almost every single month and coming out with a new project that they've made. And that is giving them credibility, it's giving them confidence, and it's giving them like a lot of visibility right now because they've always got a project that they can show people that they've worked on. And I've done one game jam as a project manager, like as a producer, and it was a really, I mean, yeah, it was an incredible technique to basically say that I had like that much more confidence than ever before to be like, I took someone that knew the art, I took someone that knew the coding, and I stepped in and filled the gaps, and together we made a project happen. And it just gave me a lot more credibility to the words I was saying. When I say that I have these skills, it's one thing, but to show that I made a game with those skills, like, it absolutely elevates people's confidence in you. If you're curious about doing game jams, the Intergames community will happily have that conversation with you. We're really big champions of game jams in there. I've got a great question here. We are just coming up to 2 o'clock, by the way, so I think I'm going to do 2 more questions, if that's all right, everyone. And then we'll start to wrap it up there. And just kind of scrolling down from the top, there's just a really great question here from Brendan Lorraine. I realise I should be bringing these questions up on the screen. Sorry, everyone, I've not been doing that for the other questions. But Brendan asks, how do you get creative members of your team, for example, artists, to engage with task planning software like Jira when you're kind of bringing it in as a new thing, or maybe it's something they're not used to and now they're going to have to change how they work to adapt to this new technology?
Yeah, so it's a common challenge, but you don't need to be afraid of it. It's just a new tool, and you need to be sure that your team is not afraid of it. If there is a resistance on one particular reason, try to work with this particular reason, because maybe some of their like workflows was actually in using some of the other tools for their plans. Maybe they were like working on their notepads or something like this. You need to understand what was the initial reason for resistance, and then just gradually start implementing it and inviting them. It would be really very helpful if at least 1 or 2 persons from your team will join you. So you will not be alone. You will have like extra champion, and this extra champion will be helping you and others to work with it. After that, you can actually help other people who are struggling with adopting this new tool, and then eventually you can go to like all in. But if you see struggles from the beginning with everyone, start from like finding one champion, and the reason why everyone else are like ignoring the tool or don't want to use it, and dealing with it will actually help you to switch to Jira or any other tool.
Yeah, diversifying the voices, making sure that your voice isn't the only one saying
Yes.
this is great, but actually finding someone else who isn't you, who can kind of come at it a little bit more, from a similar viewpoint as everyone else on the team. And then I can see 2 really great questions, so I'm going to pick between one, I'm afraid. But I think, Nick, it would be really nice to kind of just expand a little bit on yourself and your experience in the games industry. Alice has asked, how did you get into project management initially, and therefore into game production as well? So just a little bit about your journey.
Okay, so initially I started my career in the outsourcing company, and we were doing these 3D simulations, and I was just a developer. It just appeared that a lot of the times for like harder 3D simulations, you need to talk with the customers, not only with other engineers. So my route was in not only using the engineering skills, but also talking a lot. So this is something that's helped me. And eventually, when the larger and larger projects we were working on, the more and more different tools and techniques from like planning and managing came into my hands, just because I needed them to work successfully. Switch about how did I switch to a game? So I've started in a similar industry because of the like 3D simulations and working with this stuff it has a lot of stuff in common with the video games. It was just easier for me. But you never know how exactly the world could be connected. I know a lot of beautiful accountants that switched to game dev because of the data analytics, because of the stuff that is related to the data science, just because there is a lot of it in the games industry as well. I know a lot of people who were starting their careers in something more or less, I don't know, standard, like carpenters, and making DIY stuff with their hands. And they are 3D artists and they are environment artists, because this is still something that is helping them with their own side of creativity. So you never know. You just need to be aware that game industry is a very creative industry. So a lot of the things that you enjoy in your life, maybe you are drawing something, maybe you are playing music, can eventually lead to the job in the game industry, because there is almost like every version of the classical craft, but digital one, in an entertainment way, and there is a kind of game development related job opportunity.
Yeah, something we hear talked about a lot is like transferable skills, and like, this event doesn't focus on transferable skills, but like, I assure you that there are a dozen really great talks out there and really great individuals who talk about how your transferable skills are probably really relevant in the games industry. And it's, because it is passion led, so if you have a
Yes.
passion outside the games industry, you can probably bring it in and it will turn into your career somehow. But obviously, yeah, we won't really dig into that today, but maybe in a future talk. That's exactly the kind of stuff that I know, really enlightens people and really gives people a lot of joy and excitement, that they might be able to bring something that they think was unique and completely non-applicable. You can always learn about a singular use case where actually there's totally a place for that in the games industry.
Yeah.
Massive, huge thank you to you, Nick. Thank you for joining us here on the Intergames YouTube channel and LinkedIn page. Thank you for sharing all of that incredible knowledge, specifically talking about those, as we said, like the terminologies, the methodologies, the project management, what it's like to kind of take those creative disciplines and kind of try and provide them with a structure and a house in which to kind of flourish. Thank you to everyone in the audience. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your words with us, your opinions, your thoughts, your questions. Thank you for engaging. And thank you for just supporting, this initiative, these discipline deep dives, being here live with us today. And if you're watching this in the re-recording, hello to you in the future. I hope you've got flying cars and that things are better in your life. That's going to be all from the both of us today. Nick, do you have any final thoughts or words or feelings that you just want to communicate before we go?
Uh, I just want to say thanks to everyone who joined and to you for organizing it. That was great. One of the best lunchtime I had ever. Even though I've just had a water, I still enjoyed every minute of it.
Like there's a future version of this where we also Deliveroo, like send like all of our speakers like a sandwich or a pizza or something, just to make it really like the best lunch ever. But hey, look, apart from the free food, thank you so much. That's very kind of you to say. Thank you. We are, if you're watching this now live and you're like, when's the next one, Jonas? We're going to be coming back with a new season of Discipline Deep Dives in August. So the rest of July, we're going to take a little bit of a break. Don't worry. If you like events, then join the Intergames Discord. We're going to have at least, I can already say that I've got sort of 2 or 3 events planned coming up in the Discord. I haven't announced them yet. We're going to be looking at some portfolios if that's something that you're really interested in. And we're going to be trying to get some guest speakers to come in and talk about very specific things in the Discord. So please do join the community. Again, I will put a little QR code up on the screen in just a moment. And yeah, just otherwise, like, everyone have an incredible like summer experience. Really enjoy your Julys. Have a great time out there. If there's anything that didn't get answered here today, do feel free to join our community and ask those questions. Nick, can people find you on a LinkedIn, or is there any
Yes.
sort of a good way for people to connect with you?
Yes. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I don't know, somewhere in the YouTube description or in comments, I should be there. And yeah, I guess in the LinkedIn I was mentioned into the Intergames post. So yeah, feel free to message me or add me to your network.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much for sharing. That's it for now, everyone. We're going to play some music, and I'm going to give you all that Discord community QR code on the screen, and then we will end the stream there. Thanks again for joining us, and chat to all of you soon. Bye bye for now.
Bye bye.